There we go. It's typical having technical difficulties. So can you all hear me and see me okay? Somebody could put that in the chat. I'd appreciate it. Well, I'm not sure if it's working or not. I hope it is. I hope you can see me. Hope you can hear me. If somebody could just chime in and let me know if everything's working, that'd be great. But I will just assume that it is working. I'd like to welcome everybody out tonight. Thanks for tuning in, joining me here. Thought maybe we could. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Now everything's working. So when I first got on, I clicked the button to go live and just nothing happened for like, a couple of minutes. But tonight, thought we'd have kind of just a little bit more of a relaxed little lesson here and show you some Led Zeppelin riffs, some easy Led Zeppelin riffs. So some of these might be ones maybe some of you already know and stuff, but these are great for beginners or for anybody if you don't know them. They're fun to play and they sound really good. And for the most part, it's just single note riffs, so they're pretty fun to play. Anyhow, I just thought we'd kind of casually do that, and then we can do some Q&A if anybody's got any questions and stuff, and hopefully I can maybe help you out with. So, and by the way, there are tabs for all of these riffs. So if you go just in the description of this video, there's a link where you can download the tabs. So I thought we would first we could take a look at a whole lot of love. So first thing is that I just noticed that that I made a mistake on the tab for whole lot of love. So the very beginning of it, it shows on the if you've got those tabs that on the first measure. Let me pull it back up. You rest for a half note and then an eighth note, and then this riff starts. But that last eighth note rest actually shouldn't be a rest. It should be a note that I left out that's just at the very beginning. So the way it's shown is but actually it should have the 5 here on the low E is the first note, and then you slide up to 7 and then go into the rest of it from there. So if you get those tabs, just make a note on there, something that that note is missing there. And I apologize for that, but I make mistakes. All right, so for a whole lot of love, I'm going to start off with your third finger here on the 5th fret of the low E. And we're going to pick that and slide. We want it to be kind of like a slide from nowhere. So we're just going to start here at 5 and just slide to 7. And then from there, we're going to go to the 5th fret of the A string and then back to the 7th fret of the E string. So, and then back up here again. So it's. And then from there, it goes into just an E5 power chord. So this is just a regular 5th power chord that we've talked about numerous times. So your first finger on the 7th fret of the A string, and then your third finger on the 9th fret of the D string. And then you're going to play this. After you do you're going to come up to that chord, and then you're going to hit the low E palm muted 3 times. So it's all 16th notes. So let me here again. I'm sorry, I can't like look at it. I can't look at the tab sheet and have you on the screen at the same time. Oh, wait a minute, maybe I can. Actually, I guess you're not on the screen, but I'm on the screen. Yeah, so it's all 16th notes, and you're going to strum the chord, and then you're going to pedal just that open E string, palm muted 3 times. So it's like 1 E and then you're going to do that for each beat. Yeah, let me make sure. Yeah, so that entire second measure is just that riff. So starting on the first measure. And then going on to the third measure, you have one, beat 1 is, 1 E, and then beat 2 is where we have just a little bit of a change. So on beat 2 of that, of the third measure, you're going to do the chord on 1, and then palm mute E, and then on the you strum the chord again, and then you're going to strum the chord again on the downbeat of 3, and then 2 pedaled notes, and then it goes back to the, and then it just repeats. So that's like the whole riff. So it'd be like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, and actually I'm screwing that up. I've never actually tried to count it while I'm playing it. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and so it just, and like I said, it just repeats. So with stuff like this, really, trying to count it out. I mean, learning how to count out riffs and stuff is actually extremely useful thing to be able to do. I totally just ignored that kind of thing for the longest time because I could just feel it. I had a pretty good sense of timing and stuff, and so I could just play it. But if somebody asked me how to count it or whatever, I'm talking like 30 years ago, I didn't know how to do it. And then it finally got to be the point where I was like, well, if I'm going to be teaching, I really should learn how to do this. And then I'd be at rehearsals with bands, and drummers and bass players are always like the guys in the band that know how to count. So they would always kind of ridicule me a little bit because I couldn't do it. So I encourage you to try to do it, learn how to, count it and practice doing that. But when you're playing, it's not like if you went and, saw Zeppelin, that Jimmy Page would be up there counting it. It's just doing it from feel. And it just repeats like that. That's like the main riff for the song. So we're not in this, we're not going to go through any song in its entirety. These are just, like I said, these are just fun riffs to learn. Although I do encourage you to learn whole songs. I mean, it's cool just to learn, cool sounding riffs or the main riffs of songs and stuff like that. But you still want to be able to have whole songs. You don't want it to be a thing like if somebody says, "Oh, what can you play on guitar?" You don't want it to "Oh, I know how to play some Zeppelin," and then you stop and go, "That's all I got." So it's good to actually learn how to play whole songs, and maybe that's what we'll do one of these days. Is I'll try to pick a good one, or maybe if you guys have any suggestions on a song that you think would be good that we could go through, then put them in the comments, and I read all that stuff, and so I could maybe we could do something based off of your ideas. Yeah, so that's Whole Lotta Love. I'll just go through it slow a couple times for any of you that are really beginners, so that way you can have something you can kind of play along with to work your way up. I keep coming back and doing that slide in, and it actually doesn't do that. I don't know why. My brain farting, I guess. All right, so yeah, that's Whole Lotta Love. Snake Farm by Ray Wiley Hubbard. Yeah, I don't have any idea who that is. Yeah, actually, but they're counting it like that: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. That's actually good. That actually brings up like a good point. Sometimes, like if you're looking at this transcription that I made, it's got the tab and then it's got the notation above. So whenever I do tabs, that's just the way I do it, because I require my private students to learn how to, not how to read music per se. I mean, if that's something they want to learn, but it's almost, with guitar anymore, it's kind of almost a useless skill, because everything, you'd be hard pressed to find any like music books that aren't in tab anyway. But the tab doesn't tell you the timing. So you want to be able to identify what a quarter note is and how to count it. YouTube. Yeah, I'll look him up. I better actually write it down, in case sometimes this, for some reason, the comments you guys leave, as soon as I hang up, they just disappear. So Snake Farm, Ray Wiley Hubbard. And hopefully I'll be able to read my handwriting. Yeah, so like, you want to be able to identify, look at like a quarter note and know that it's a quarter note and how to count it, and like identify a 16th note, how to count it, so on and so forth. But sometimes you'll get like a riff that it's a really weird combination. Like this one, this Whole Lotta Love is pretty simple to read it, because it's just all in 16th notes, except the little pickup notes. That's like the only thing that's not in 16th notes. So when if you're playing something that you've heard before, that it's you have something to reference. But say you're trying to read off of tabs a song that you've never heard before, you can play it and it'll sound pretty much correct if you do the timing right. So if you're looking at the timing, and let's say that it's like a 16th note and then a quarter note and then 2/8 notes and then a half note, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to count that? It would be pretty difficult to like figure out, how to like actually count it. But what you can do is look at it as, we'll break it down like a quarter note gets one beat, so if you've got, like the tempo of the song, every time that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if it was 8th notes, it gets a half a beat. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then 16th notes, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a so if you look at that and go, okay, well, I've got a 16th note and then I've got an 8th note, you could just know that, okay, well, the 8th note rings out twice as long as the 16th note does. So that means that the first note the duration is going to be less than the second note, stuff like that. I'm kind of completely getting off track here, but that's the difference between a guitar player and a musician. That's funny, as that's actually something that I've said to students, like, as long as I've been teaching, I'll say this is what separates, it's cool to be a guitar player, but it's much cooler to be a musician who plays guitar. And so if you're a musician, then, you can read, you understand some of the music theory stuff that like we've talked about on here before. Okay, so let's get back on on task here, and I didn't put these in like order of difficulty or anything like that. I just kind of threw it together. Whole Lotta Love is probably the easiest one on here. But the next one we're going to look at is definitely not the easiest one on here. We're going to look at Black Dog. So Black Dog is just completely made up of just single notes. 6 years of trumpet. Yeah. It's funny is that, you know, you wouldn't think that playing trumpet would be helpful for playing guitar, but it actually is. Most of the students I've had that have been really good students that catch on quick and do well, not all of them, but the majority, have played some other kind of instrument before. So they already have some experience with counting, and, you know, they understand how all that stuff works. So yeah, that's cool. I actually, I wanted to learn to play the violin before I wanted to play the guitar. Before I got introduced to like bands like Kiss and Fleetwood Mac and Nazareth and stuff like that, when I was like, you know, like 6 years old, my parents all they listened to was classical music. So I was constantly hearing, you know, classical music, and I wanted to play the violin. I thought that would be really cool, and I wanted to learn, but they never did like put me into lessons or anything. They always said that they didn't think I would stick with it or whatever. So sometimes I wonder how differently, you know, life would have turned out if I would have went with the violin first. All right, so for Black Dog, we're going to gotta hurry and take a peek. Okay, because for some reason I try to play this song in the wrong key all the time. So we're going to start off here on the 7th fret of the A string with your 3rd finger. And then we're going to go to the 5th fret of the D string with your 1st finger, to the 7th with your 2nd finger, or excuse me, to the 6th with your 2nd finger, and then to the 7th with your 3rd finger. So this one is, you know, it's fairly quick, but we'll go over it slow. And again, I'll try to have it so there's some kind of a reference for, you know, beginners and stuff to be able to, you know, kind of play along with it. And again, for any of you that you may have just joined, welcome. And you can download the tabs for all these riffs that we're going over. The link's in the description for this video. All right, so we're going to start here, 7th fret of the A string, then to the D string, 5, 6, 7, and then back to the 7th fret of the A string. Then we're going to skip over the D string and go down to the G string, 5th fret, with your 1st finger. And we're going to do just a very slight bend. And then follow that with the 7th fret of the D string. So that right there in itself is a pretty cool riff. You can actually use that with just with your improvisation, you know, out of the minor pentatonic scale, you know, makes a pretty cool, just a little lick. So. Okay, so now after we come back here to the 7th fret of the D string, this is one of the parts that is going to be the trickiest for you if you're a beginner. We're going to move. We're going to go from that 7th fret of the D string to the 7th fret of the G string. Now, rather than lifting your finger off and moving it, if you just roll it up, I'm not sure how well you can see this. You just kind of roll your finger up. So, well, here, let me, so you can kind of see the indentations there in my finger. So that's where the D string is sitting, is right there. And then when I go to the G string, it's right there. I just roll up. So it's just kind of the pad of my finger hits it. It's just going to be it's a lot quicker to make the transition that way. And it's just a lot smoother and easier in my opinion. Oh my gosh, why do I keep doing that? After you roll up to that 7th fret of the G string, then you're going to go to the 5th fret of the B string with your 1st finger. And then that finger, you want to kind of roll it back. So coming from the B string, that you can roll it back so you're on the 5th fret of the G string, and you want to use it'll be kind of more of the tip of your finger that does that. So if you haven't done this before, like where you're rolling from one string to the other on the same fret, like I said, it might be kind of tricky and stuff for you at first, but really just kind of mess around with it. There isn't like a set way that you do this. It's there's what I mean is, like, when you watch me do it, it may not look exactly the same when you see your finger do it, or you see somebody else do it. It's all all that factors into the size of your hands and your fingers, length of your fingers and stuff. There's going to be a lot of variances there. So you don't really want to try to go off of trying to emulate I don't know what word I'm looking for here. Like the exact posture of how my fingers are sitting. And that really kind of goes for any lessons that you watch on YouTube and stuff. There's so many things that are going to factor into that, aside from just the size of your hands and length of your fingers, it's length of your arms, length of your torso. There's lots of things that are going to factor in there. All right, so. Oh my gosh, I did it again. I have no idea why I keep doing that. Then when you roll back to the 5th fret of the G string, you're going to pick that and do a hammer-on to the 7th fret and then pull back off. So it's a quick hammer pull. And then from there, you're going to go back to the 7th fret of the D string and then back to the 5th fret of the G string with that slight bend again. And then come back. All right, so this last part of it here is probably the part that that my students that I've gone over this with, that most of them have had the most problem with getting, is this part. So after you ended there on the 7th fret of the D string with your 3rd finger. Now you want to put your 1st finger back onto the 5th fret. Pick that once, back to the 7 twice, and then move down to the A string, 5th and 7th fret. Now we're going to shift that hand down 3, 5, and then an A. So like I said, it's kind of quick, and I think that's why it's a thing that they have a lot of problem with it. And it's also easier when you're ascending up, rolling across the strings, than it is when you're descending, as a general rule. At least that's how it is for me, and most people that I've worked with they agreed. So let's play the whole thing slowly. right, so that's Black Dog. So we got 2 down, 2 more to go. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions about either of these two that we just went over? Let's see, I'm going to have to change. There we go. All right, so if nobody has any questions or anything, then I guess we can move along. So the next one we're going to look at is Heartbreaker. This is the longest riff out of all these that we're going to look at, and I don't believe that this one is as difficult as Black Dog. But again, if you're a beginner, a lot of times everything seems difficult. But fear not. You have the tabs and you have YouTube, and go back and watch this as many times as you want. And you'll be able to get it down. And if you're having any problems with any particular problems and stuff, ask questions. Let me see if I can help you. All right, so I already forgot what it was that I said I was going to do. Oh yeah, Heartbreaker. All right, so for Heartbreaker, this is another one that the riff doesn't actually start on the downbeat of 1, which is something that I remember always just assuming that. And that was actually one of the things I was saying I'd get ridiculed by other band members, is we'd play some riff that didn't, like this, this one actually starts on the downbeat of 4. And then, but I didn't think that way. I was always, it starts on 1. And so then they would say something like, all right, well, let's just start on the downbeat of the 3rd measure or whatever. And so where I thought that was and where it actually was not the same thing, because I didn't know, I didn't understand. So this one, actually, that's where it starts. It starts on the downbeat of 4, and it's a quarter note. It's around the 3rd fret of the low E with your 3rd finger. And we're going to do another one of those just little quarter step bends. Now, a quarter step bend, and if there's stuff that I start talking about and it's like, you're like, oh my gosh, I already know this, just bear with me. I want to make this accessible to everybody. So when you go from 1 fret to the next fret, that's a half step. So like G to G sharp. So this quarter step bend is you're going in between there. So instead of, that's a half step. We want, it's just a little bit of a bend. And usually those are put on riffs that are kind of have some kind of a bluesy background to them. I've noticed that they'll put that in there, just that little tiny bend. There's tons of stuff like that in Black Sabbath riffs. Although sometimes I've wondered on the Black Sabbath ones, especially where they are on their first like 5 records, I've often wondered if perhaps it wasn't intentional. Because when you think about, Tony Iommi has, he has artificial fingertips and his guitar is tuned down so the strings are like wet spaghetti noodles. So maybe he didn't intend to make those bends. Sometimes that's what I've kind of wondered, If I ever meet him, I'll ask him. All right, so we got that bend. So that's, like I said, on the down. So it's like you rest 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it goes into the 2nd measure. So for the second measure, we start off with the open A string, and that's a quarter note. And then to the third fret with your third finger, and there's a little bit of vibrato on that. So it's 1, 2, and then we're going to go to beat number 3. So here's another example of what I was talking about with trying to read the timing. So you see, if you're looking at the tabs for this, you have an 8th note, and then a 16th note, and then another 16th note, and another 8th note. So that, since it's an 8th note, it's the open D string. We have an 8th note, and then, or not, okay, I guess we cut out there, so I'm not exactly sure how much of what I just said we heard. So I'm just going to start back over again. I was looking at the tabs and I didn't, and then it said on the screen there was something wrong. It was an internet connection failure. It's starting to storm here where I'm at, so there is a possibility that the internet will just completely go out because, you know, I'm on here doing that, and that's just the way things work. Okay, so if you're looking at your tabs on the second measure, there's the open, it's 0, 1, 2 on the D string. So you got open 1, 2. So it's an 8th note and then 2 16th notes. So this is an 8th note, and then the first and second fret are both 16th notes. So what that means is that an 8th note rings out twice the amount of time that a 16th note does. So 2 16th notes is the same amount of space as an 8th note. So again, it isn't something you need to count this. That'll just help you to know that, okay, that this note's going to ring out longer and then these two are going to be quicker. So like that. So starting on the first measure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, da, da, da. And then back to that third fret of the low E with that same quarter step bend. So that's the first 2 measures. Then starting on the third measure, we have the A string played open 4 times and it's 16th note. So that's going to be 1 E, and then the downbeat of 2 is the third fret of the A string with a little bit of vibrato again. So, and then that same open 1, 2, 3, and then that's just a repeat. So you play measure 1, and then measures 2 and 3 are repeated 3 times before you move on. And when you're looking at this too, like that actually that what I'm calling measures 2 and 3 is actually measures 7 and 8, but it's just because, you know, we did all the other tabs were all in one. I did it all at the same time. That's what I'm saying, with the exception of Whole Lotta Love. I added that in because originally there was just 3 on here, and I thought we better get 1 more on there. We'll be cutting it short. Where are you located? I am in Utah, actually, and it is cold as it's cold today, real cold. I hate the weather here. I have no idea why I still live here. All right, so. So I'm repeating. All right, so then after that, the riff, it's actually still the same riff, but we're just going to move it up a whole step. So instead of starting on A, we're going to start on B here on the second fret of the A string. So all of the notes are going to be a whole step higher, but now this makes it a little bit more challenging because we don't get the luxury of just using these open strings, and now we got to start using our pinky, and nobody likes that, but use it. So this is completely off subject, but made me think about it. If using your pinky is something, especially if, well, even I guess it doesn't really matter. You're a beginner, or you could be playing for a long time, and you've just avoided using your pinky because, uh, I've heard all of the reasons. It's too short in the long run. Gosh dang it, it just blacked out again. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be here to be able to get through the rest of this, because I'm having some internet connection issues here. Yeah, so really don't avoid using your pinky. Use it. And you might feel like you're taking like a step backwards to do it, but in the long run, it's going to be so much better off. All the really really great players with really great technique, watch them use their pinky. Okay, so since we're going to move up, so we're going to start here on the 2nd fret, and it's the same timing, by the way. With my fingers, I had to use the small. I had to learn to use the small finger. So by the small finger, are you referring to your pinky? Is that what you're meaning? Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there are exceptions to every rule. I have a bass student right now that has really bad arthritis, and him using his pinky and some of these stretches and stuff are really really difficult because his fingers are pretty jacked up. So sometimes you do have to make exceptions to be able to just to be able to play. I mean, like, think of, there's people that, like Django Reinhardt, he only had, he's missing a couple of fingers. So, there's ways around it. But if you don't, as long as you haven't got some kind of a problem with your hand, you really should just try to use your pinky. Okay, so we're going to start there, and like I said again, it's the same timing, so it's going to still be that same. We're going to go to the 2nd fret of the D string, and we're going to go 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to come up here with the pinky again to the 5th fret of the low E, and we're going to put that same little quarter step bend. There are no SOGs in music. Okay, I'm kind of a dummy, so I'm not exactly sure what you mean by SOGs. So if you could clarify that, I'm curious now. All right, so 2 on the A string, 2 to 5, then to the D string, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, and then to the 5th fret of the low E with that quarter step bend. Back to the 2nd fret of the A string, to the 5th. Oh, standard operating procedures. Oh, okay. My bad. I see. I probably should have known that, but I don't know. But you're exactly right. Well, actually, there are kind of guidelines. If you think about that, like that, okay, a guideline would be that really should use your pinky, but if you don't have one, or maybe your finger got slammed in a door when you were a kid and doesn't work right. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But when firefighter, cool. Like when I did this live stream, I was talking about music theory and stuff. This way, this is the true method, but it's not necessarily going to work for everybody. So don't feel like that if for whatever reason you stray from doing certain things, even things that I say or whatever, that doesn't mean anything. The bottom line is what it sounds like. Marty Friedman is a really great example. He has got really weird technique. If you've ever watched him, like if you ever just pull up live videos of like Marty Friedman playing, like there's tons of them on YouTube, and just watch him play, he's got we're glitching out again. Of course we are. But anyway, he's got some really weird technique. I mean, he's an incredible guitar player. I'm not a wart on his butt, but he is like, hi Mitchell. He's an amazing guitar player and a really nice guy too. I'm not even a wart on his butt for ability or technique, but it's just weird to watch him play because like he picks really weird, just everything. But he's also got really long arms, so I think that's part of it. All right, so let's just see if we can get through the rest of this. We got one more after this one, and I just I'm starting to have my doubts if we're gonna make it. All right, so and then back to the D string again, 2, 3, 4, and then that bend on the 5th fret, and then it goes back to the first riff again. So the whole thing. All right, and that's it for Heartbreaker. It's a pretty cool one. Actually, I think that was actually the very first Zeppelin riff that I ever learned when I was a kid, but not 100% sure on that. All right, so the last one I want to look at is Live and Love and Made. This is my personal favorite of the ones that we're looking at today anyway. I shouldn't say it's my absolute favorite Zeppelin riff, Jimmy Page riff, but I really like this one. So alright, so this one here isn't too tough. It's actually kind of similar to some of the other ones. The same kind of, pentatonic stuff with the same, chromatic passages, going, being chromatic means that you're going half step and then a half step and then a half step. So the first 3 measures of this one are pretty easy, and then the 4th measure is the one that, where again, I have students that have had issues with this, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you have struggle with bar chords, then that might make it a little bit tougher. But I have kind of an alternative way I can show you that it's almost exactly the same, but it's enough that you could play it that way, especially if you're struggling with the bar chords. But I encourage you to work with getting those down anyway. Okay, so we're going to start here on the 5th fret of the low E, and then we're going to go to the 3rd fret of the A string, and it says that we're disconnected again. So looks like we cut out again. So the 5th fret of the low E to the 3rd fret of the A string, back to the 5th fret of the low E, and then back to the 3rd fret of the A string, and it's 3, 4, 5. So then we're going to go to the 3rd fret of the low E, and this is on the end of 4. Now, for those of you who don't know this, if you look there on the transcription on the that first measure going to the 2nd measure, you can see that it's a 3. The very last note of of the first measure is the 3rd fret of the low E. And then the very first note of the second measure is still the 3rd fret of the low E, but if you notice in the tab that it's in parentheses, and then if you look up at the top at the music, you can see that there's like a line connecting those two notes together. So what that is, for those of you who don't know, is it's a tied note. So what it is that when you have a tied note, you pick the first one, but the one that's in parentheses, you don't pick it, you just let it ring out for that duration. Oh, hey, Silvio. Yeah, I've already been talking about that. It's starting to storm here, and I think we're having some internet connection problems, but I'm just about done. I'm in like 5 more minutes, and this one will be done. Yeah, so what it is that though it's an 8th note tied to an 8th note, so the 2 8th notes tied together equals, it's the duration of a quarter note. So the second note on the second measure is another 3. So back to the 5th fret of the low E, to the 3rd fret of the A string, back to that 5th fret of the low E. So that's the first 2 measures. Alright, then on that 3rd measure, we're just starting here on the 3rd fret, and we're going to go 3 5 and then a rest, and then another 3 5 rest. So it's like 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So that's probably the easiest measure out of it. All right. So then for the last measure, and this is the part that I said that most people struggle with, and or I shouldn't say most people. This is the part that I've had like students struggle with. It's mostly if it's a thing that you're not good with bar chords. If you're good with bar chords, you got this. But we're going to take the bar chord shape for a major bar chord with the root note on the 6th string. So I'm just barring all the way across the 5th fret. Then my second finger is on the 6th fret of the G string. My 3rd finger is on the 7th fret of the A string, and my 4th finger is on the 7th fret of the D string. So that's like an A major. So what we're going to do is we're just going to strum just the E, A, D, and G. And then take your pinky and just flatten it out, so that way it's going across the 7th fret of the D, G, and D string. So when you do that strum, you want to try to just get up here to that top end. Could you press down on both strings as you are only playing single notes? Do you mean like, so you're just like bar your finger here? Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you mean on this riff. Is that what you're referring to? Because I'm not sure. I mean, there's lots of times there's riffs where you can just like bar, to get so that you're not having to move all of your fingers. Anytime you can take a shortcut where you can just kind of park a finger and not have to move everything around, it's always good. So for this, if that's like really tough for you, if you're really struggling with bar chords, then another way you could do it, like I said, it sounds good enough to kind of get you through it, but it's not exactly what he's doing, is if you just take your shape for your E major chord, and you just bring it all the way up, so your first finger is on the 6th fret of the G string, and then your second finger is on the 7th fret of the A, and then your third finger's on the 7th fret of the D. And then you take your pinky and just put it down onto the 7th fret of the G string and then lift it back off. So instead of, it gets kind of the gist of the riff, but like I said, it's not exactly what he's doing, and you're not getting all of the notes in there. But that's not always necessary. Sometimes you can, take liberties, cut things off here, just kind of change things around, and it doesn't really make, a terribly big difference. All right, so that is all 4 of the Zeppelin riffs that I wanted to go over with you guys tonight. So here we got, a little bit of time left. Does anybody have any questions? And Peter 2017. Oh, actually, I guess you're not doing that that's not a question. That's a statement. You could just press down on both strings as you're only playing single notes. Yeah, like I said, that's something that can be done. I'm not sure what context you're talking about from which one of these riffs or whatever. But yeah, so if anybody has any questions about these or just, other stuff, we got time to play something dummy if you want. Nothing really, no questions. Well, while I'm waiting for any of you that want to punch in some questions, what would you guys think about maybe doing something like we did tonight, but with some AC/DC riffs? Oh, you just hit 1 year of playing? Well, happy anniversary. What's a good song that captures the minor and major scale? So you mean like a song that changes key, or a song that part of it's in major and then the other part's in minor, but it's the relative minor? If that's what you mean, then oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of the song. I'm brain farting it. It's a Beatles song. I actually just did a lesson on it for the YouTube channel a couple of weeks ago. So you mean, yeah, uses both, so technically, if you're in a key, like let's say you're playing a song that's in the key of G major, so the chords are G, C, and D, you could solo over that with G major, but you could also solo over it with E pentatonic minor or E natural minor, because E minor is the relative minor to G major. But if it's like a song where it's like really emphasized that this part of it is major and then this part of it is minor, We Can Work It Out. We Can Work It Out by the Beatles is a really good example of that. The mic is broke. Yeah, we're having some connection issues, but we're about wrapped up anyway. So, yeah, and a lesson on using the slide. Well, it would be a very short lesson for me because I'm not really much of a slide player. I've screwed around with. I've had a slide that I got when I was like 12, and I still have it. And I'm not real great at it, but as far as the fundamentals of how to use it and how to make it so when you're playing, it doesn't just sound like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Oh, you're welcome, Craig. I hope that when you listen to the song, you'll know what I'm talking about. Because there's like the beginning part of it, where Paul McCartney's singing, and it's all really happy and upbeat, and then it goes to like this bridge section, I'm not sure what you'd call it, and it's all of a sudden now in a really minor, dark sounding key, and then John Lennon's singing, and they switch back and forth. So it's like a really kind of a weird way to put a song together, but I think it's pretty awesome. But yeah, I could show you, I could do a little bit of stuff on like as far as how to use it and everything. and I have like a slide thing that I kind of worked out. Maybe, yeah, maybe we can do that. Maybe we'll do that with something else, because I'm not sure if I could rattle on about a slide for an hour or not. But yeah, I'd like to thank everybody that came out. I appreciate it. If you like the live stream, hit the like button. Go onto the channel. As soon as we hang up, it's going to go into a rerun. And then, oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I like doing this, but sometimes, honestly, it's like, sometimes I think, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? So I've been trying to plan them out more in advance, so it's not just flying by the seat of my pants. And now that we figured out how to get the tabs in there where you can download them, that really helps. But yeah, when the rerun comes up, go back over there, leave a comment, hit that like button. That really helps to them know that I'm doing a good job and that I can keep my job. All right. Well, again, thanks everybody for showing up and hanging out with me. Always a good time. And I will see you guys next Wednesday. And I'm thinking maybe we'll do some AC/DC riffs, or maybe we'll do that slide thing. I don't know. I'll figure it out. See what's going on. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next week. Ciao, everybody.